Thanks, Brandon. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to mention, I know how challenging this past year has been, or 15 months, or whatever you want to call it. And I appreciate all the hard work that you guys have all done. I know it's a little bit different, not being able to get into the locker room and do your jobs the way you're normally accustomed to. I also want to thank and appreciate our travel group. It's been a challenging year. It's not to say that others haven't had challenges, but I give our training staff, our coaching staff, the players, and more importantly, our taxi squad guys, that's a huge commitment for them, and some of them didn't all play all that much. So I just wanted to point out that I'm very proud and appreciative of what everybody's gone through this year.
Thank you, Cam. We'll open up the Q&A. We'll first start with Kevin Dupont.
Hey, Cam, a couple if I could. The first one being on Swayman, as a guy who had success as a shooter yourself. What do you see in terms of his style, his approach? What you think shooters would be thinking?
Well, there's not a big book on him for NHL players right now. So, but what I see with him is just he's so calm and poised, and I like how he challenges the shooters. He comes out, gets to the top of the paint, so there's a little less to see when you're looking at where to put the puck. But his calmness and his poise has really been impressive to me.
And the other one, Cam, is Butch and Marshy touched on this a bit about what an asset Chara can be for the Caps in that he knows your team so well. Butch talked about how he knows Bergeron. Marshy talked about how he knows code words on the ice.
I think Marshy, there's no code words.
He's keeping them from you.
Yeah, that's true.
What do you think of that in terms of what a player can bring about knowledge from the other side?
Well, obviously, playing for this coaching staff for as long as Zdeno has, and playing with the players that he has for his tenure here in Boston, you certainly know some tendencies, and guys are aware of that. But also on the flip side, guys certainly know how Zdeno is going to play and what to expect from him, and maybe how to exploit that a little bit as well.
Okay, thank you.
Go next to Emily Benjamin.
Hey, Cam. Thank you for doing this. Just wanted to ask, to go back to Swayman. It's obviously a small sample size at the NHL level, but what has the way he's played and how he's done this thus far, sort of how has that potentially changed your calculus in terms of the goaltending situation looking forward from your view? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we've certainly had some internal talks recently about, how things are going to look moving forward. We want to get through this year and see how the season ends up and where we're at. But yeah, just the way he's played certainly, has kind of given us some thoughts of, what direction we may go in compared to where we were maybe 2 months ago.
We'll go next to Steve Conroy.
Hey, Cam, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. At the end of last season, one of the things you wanted to address was the overall physicality of your team. With Washington coming up here, obviously a very physical team. How well do you think you guys did in that department, and how do you match up with Washington in that respect?
Well, as you know, they got a lot of big bodies, and they like to play physical. This division, maybe aside from Pittsburgh to a degree, the other three teams and that are in the playoffs in this division, play more of a physical style game. And I think our guys are prepared for that challenge and are expecting that. And I think we did a good job with compiling this roster, especially adding some pieces at the deadline that gives us a chance to win some playoff series.
On Swayman, if for whatever reason Tuukka is not able to play at all, where is your confidence level in him, considering his lack of experience in knowing how well he played?
Well, just based on the short sample size that we've got of the way he's played, I think from my perspective and probably the players' perspective, they're going to be confident playing in front of them. You don't get experience until you start playing, so that's how you gain your experience. So we'll see, what happens here in the playoffs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tara Sullivan.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Kim, do you have any, you talk about the physicality, any concerns with Wilson? Is there anything you can do pre-series to put anybody on alert? What are your feelings regarding him being in this series?
Well, I think he's not flying under the radar from our perspective. I mean, everybody knows what type of player he is, and he plays hard and he'll take the body. So we have to expect that. I don't think that's going to change. We have to also focus on how we need to play and what we need to do to be successful. We just have to be smart. And more importantly, we got to be careful with their power play. So we got to try and stay out of the box as much as possible.
We'll go next to Joe Haggerty, but before we do, just a reminder to media, if you no longer have a question, please put your hand down. Go ahead, Joe.
Hey, Cam, thanks for your thoughts at the beginning. I think feelings mutual for everybody on this end, just how appreciation for how challenging this year has been for everybody.
Yeah.
I got a couple here, if you could. First, just in general, your optimism for this Bruins team heading into this playoffs before you kind of jump on the train here at the beginning.
Well, I really like the way we finished the season. We had a couple bad periods here and there, but overall, I think our guys are getting dialed in and feeling good about the way they're playing. So I assume we have confidence. I certainly do. I assume the players do and the coaching staff. So that's how I'm looking at it. I mean, I like, for the most part, how we played coming into this playoff series this year.
And just your assessment on the job that Donnie and the rest of the management staff and the scouts and everybody, the job that everybody did sort of in management and the decision makers at the trade deadline, based on how well the guys have fit in. I know it's an incomplete picture right now because the playoffs haven't started, but it seems like these guys were really good fits for the needs for the team.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, there's times where things don't work out the way you want them to. You maybe the player you thought you'd like to get it didn't materialize, but more importantly, it's doing all the background information, like what's the player like, how is he going to fit into our locker room, because we're talking about adding 3 players or 2 players, it does make a difference, and you want them to kind of mesh seamlessly if possible, and so to get as much information as we can on the guys that you start targeting, I think is key, and hoping that they're going to be good guys in the locker room and buy into the system that we've got here and understand what it takes to play here. And I think our staff did a really good job of identifying those players.
Go next to Matt Porter.
Hey, Cam, 2 here. One, from a kind of global standpoint on your center depth in the organization, what has this season done for you in evaluating that? It's obviously been a little bit difficult with Providence, only playing 2 other teams and everything that's gone on.
Well, that's something we've identified prior to this year, that we're maybe a little thin in depth in that position, where we have to address that. From a development standpoint, you're right. It's been a little challenging for some of our players, not getting in as many games as they normally would in a season like this. Probably practicing more than playing. But that's a position where we feel we'd like to stock up on for sure going forward.
And with Bergeron and Krejci in particular, obviously everybody's seen Krejci, raise his game or get to his previous level, even with Hall coming here. Bergeron's had a really good year. Has what you've seen from both of them changed your thinking in how you may approach contracts with them in the years to come, particularly with Krejci expiring?
Yeah, I mean, we're always evaluating, especially players that are in the last year of their deal or going into the last year of their deal. I mean, Krejci certainly has elevated his game. There's no question, and it's there's no surprise that adding Taylor Hall to his wing, certainly gave him some life. Those two have meshed extremely well together. But we'll continue to evaluate as the playoffs go along, and then reassess once the season's over.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We'll go next to Connor Ryan, and then back to Emily Benjamin. Go ahead, Connor.
Hey, Cam. Throughout Taylor Hall's time here so far, he's regularly mentioned the value of the leadership in the room, the structure in place within the organization. It seems like those have been thoughts have been echoed by other players that have arrived here in Boston over the years. What have you thought of Hall's fit here so far, and what does it say about maybe the reputation of the guys in the room? That seems like that's something that a lot of newcomers have benefited when arriving here in Boston.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, we're blessed with the leadership that we have and had for years. It really starts with how we want players to play, how we want players to act, how we want players to be in the community. And you may want all that, but you may not get those types of players. And fortunately for us, we have that in spades, and everybody buys in. When your best players are also your hardest workers, it's very challenging not to buy in. And if you don't, then you're not here very long.
Going back to Emily Benjamin.
Just to sort of go back to Hall, I mean, you talked a little bit about all the guys coming into the trade deadline. What has pleased you particularly about what he's been able to do? How did that line up with what maybe you were hoping he could do? And are there any thoughts about potentially finding a longer term fit with him if the money can work out?
Well, I think, mainly it really solidified some more depth in the offensive position of need, where we're getting a little bit more production 5-on-5. Now teams are looking not just at the Bergeron line, but now they got to look at Krejci's line, and even whether it's Coyle or Corrali, Ritchie, those guys are have chipped in recently, and then our fourth line, adding Lazar. We've got a number of players that can slot in and out there that are going to give us energy and hopefully chip in a little bit as well. Like I said, with David, as far as Taylor goes, I mean, we're gonna continue to see how things go with the playoffs here, and I think we'd like to try and get something done, but that remains to be seen. But that's our hopes.
Go to Sophia.
Hi, Cam. Just wanted to echo Joe Haggerty's sentiments. Thank you for what you said at the start of this, but wanted to kind of look ahead, which I know is difficult, but I was thinking two-part question. How much have you enjoyed the division, seeing the same teams over and over again, and the rivalries and the intensity that develops? But then on the flip side, how much of a challenge does it present building when you have these, contracts like Taylor Hall or David Krejci, when you haven't had a chance to assess the Torontos?
Yeah, I mean, knowing that
Tampa
we're going
Bay
back,
Lightnings and
sorry.
chat.
You
Oh,
cut
all
out.
good. I'm done. Thank you.
No, you cut out a little bit, so I think I got the gist of your question. Your first question, I think everybody kind of likes maybe a 2-game set where you go into a city and you play 2 games. I think it really cuts down on the travel and wear and tear. I don't know, the league is going to consider that, and I don't know about next year, but maybe moving forward. I think the players really enjoyed that part of it, where you're not always hopping in a plane going to another city. And then the second part is where I kind of lost you. If you can repeat that.
Sure. Sorry. I just was going to ask you about the challenges of not seeing, Tampa or Toronto or other teams that would be in your division normally, in terms of building for the future with these looming contracts coming up. Have they presented challenges not being able to match up against the rest of the league like a normal season would present?
Not in particular. I mean, we certainly watch enough hockey games. The only difference is we're not playing those teams, right? So, we certainly have played them enough over the last, few years. We kind of know what they are and who they are. So, and there's plenty of video out there. So other than our team stacking up against them, that's the only difference. We certainly know those teams very well still.
Thank you, Sophia. We have time for two more. We'll go back to our friends at the Globe with Kevin Dupont and Matt Porter. Dupes, why don't you go first?
Hi, Cam. This is just basic housekeeping, but there's so many kids in the lineup last night. Just what do you have in terms of numbers at the moment, in terms of full roster size? How many guys will go down to Washington? How do you budget all that?
Well, the league has a protocol of how many people we can have in the travel party, including players. So it's really, I think, looking back to Toronto in the bubble, I think we had 31 players in total. That's including 4 goalies. So I think we'll be somewhere similar heading into the playoffs with our travel party.
So you'll have 4 goalies on the road, you think?
Maybe not all the time, but probably yes.
Okay. And you know nothing more about the schedule other than Saturday night?
No, nothing has been indicated. My guess is I'm hoping it's going to be every other night.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Matt Porter, final question.
Yeah, when do you expect the team will meet the 85% threshold there with vaccinations?
That's a great question. We have, we're up in the 80s with the first dose or shot. The challenging part is when to do the second shot, because, there is some, everybody kind of, I'm sure has read this as well. Know this, that the second shot, you do get some more side effects than you do with the first. So we have to plan that properly. And then fully vaccinated, from what I understand, it's 2 weeks after your second shot, you are considered fully vaccinated.